Good evening. My name is Sherry Dong, President of the Board of the Chinese Historical Society of New England. Thank you for joining us for our annual meeting. As in person, our goal is to be informative, share program highlights, and recognize extraordinary trailblazers who have contributed to the vitality of our community. As with many, 2020 brought an unexpected and life-altering event, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the need to adapt, cancel, delay, or modify planned programs, activities, spaces, etc. for the foreseeable future. Our programs and activities are very in-person oriented. Historical walking tours, exhibits, access to our archives and collections, and our annual dinner, our largest gathering of the year, where we honor those who have paved the way and made significant contributions to the Chinese and broader communities, where old friends and new acquaintances share stories and a 10-course banquet. It has been quite an adjustment. While we cannot be with you in person this year, we are so appreciative to our members, friends, collaborators, and donors near and far who continue to support our mission to document, preserve, and promote the history of Chinese immigration and the experience and contributions of the Chinese in New England. Tonight, let's imagine all of the delicious dishes paced throughout the evening that we would be sharing, family style, the lively and engaging conversations we would be having at the dinner table, and as we circulate around the banquet hall, in between brief remarks and Sojourner awards to celebrate. Following our 2019 annual meeting, we participated in a number of programs and activities pre-COVID. We co-sponsored an event organized by the Chinese American Citizens Alliance Boston chapter and the American Legion Boston Chinatown Post 328 regarding the Congressional Gold Medal for Chinese American World War II veterans. We also collaborated on several exhibits. First, the Boston Athenaeum hosted an exhibit entitled Required Reading, Reimagining a Colonial Library. CHSNE was honored to be selected as one of 10 community partners to offer its own list of essential reading for inclusion in this reimagined library. Selected readings included The Chinese Laundryman, a study of social isolation, and Impossible Subjects, Illegal Aliens and the Making of Modern America. It wrapped up before the pandemic ground things to a halt. The Museum of Chinese in America in New York City organized the exhibition Gathering, Collecting and Documenting Chinese American History, intended to tell the origin story of Chinese historical societies and museums across the US. Over 24 organizations participated, each providing one object for display significant to that organization. CHSNE shared the model for its Mount Hope Memorial Project, which galvanized members of the community and led to CHSNE's founding. The exhibit has been extended to March 2021 to give people an additional opportunity to visit. We also began a project focusing on our archives and collections, which included a collaboration with Boston Asian Youth Essential Service. With a grant, we were able to purchase materials and supplies to improve the preservation of current and future archives. We have been working with YES youth, teaching them about our archives and collections, proper archiving techniques, and having them choose from our collections to organize a public exhibit. They have also been processing and digitizing existing and more recent additions to our collections. Unfortunately, we had to pause the project because of the pandemic to keep our youth, staff, and volunteers safe. Over the summer 2020, we were able to bring back the youth in person to pick up where they left off. They are in the process of narrowing down possible exhibit ideas. We will decide between virtual and in-person, depending on public health guidance when the exhibit is ready. This summer, CHSNE also worked with artist Yuan, providing her with pictures, select content, and assistance with research for her Chinatown Lantern project, currently on display in the Chin Park on the Rose Kennedy Greenway. If you have not stopped by, we hope you will. It is on display through November 18th, and perhaps pick up some takeout and support Chinatown small businesses at the same time. Earlier this summer, we lost a giant to the community, whose impact and reach extended far beyond Chinatown, to MIT, Hong Kong, the urban planning and architectural communities, and more. Tunny Lee was a dear friend and supporter of CHSNE's. With his family's blessing, we were honored to establish a lecture series in his memory. We thank the many who have contributed to date. The lecture series seeks to present a range of topics concerning the Chinese in New England. In September, we kicked off our inaugural Tunny F. Lee Memorial Lecture Series talk with Dr. Nicole Neuendorf, an anthropologist at Harvard University, on her new book, Chinese Senior Migrants and the Globalization of Retirement. As our first virtual format event, we were pleased with the outcome, with over 80 attendees from across the country and abroad. We are already planning our second Tunny Lee lecture, a panel discussion with Chinese American veterans, coming in December. Many of you have already met, virtually or in person, our new director, Brianna Allen, who joined us in July. She has done a great job in her short tenure to date, including kicking off the Tunny Lee lecture series and overseeing receipt of several new donated collections, including inventorying, cataloging, digitizing, and preparing them for virtual display. Brianna is no stranger to CHSNE, having interned with us from 2015 to 2016. She worked on a variety of projects, including our annual dinner, chronicle, and collections. She also accessed our archives, including the Women's Oral History Project, in her graduate research. With Brianna's background in archives and the pandemic limiting in-person activities, it has been a good opportunity for her to focus on our existing and incoming collections, helping us to transition into digital format that facilitate public access beyond Boston and New England. Brianna began with our newly purchased archival materials and formulating a plan to process our collections. She recently began putting several collections online. Today, we have a dedicated exhibition site with 2 collections online, with more to come in the following months. Please allow me to introduce Brianna to share a bit on those collections and highlight new collections.
Good evening, everyone. I am so honored to be able to share what CHSNE has been up to archiving collections-wise. Since starting in early July, I have had the pleasure of speaking to so many community members about their donations, both new and old. If you're not aware, CHSNE has been collecting for a majority of its existence. We have a wide variety of materials in our office and storage space that span across much of Boston Chinatown's history. From papers to photographs, paintings to pottery, costumes, oral histories, maps, and so much more. We have a lot of work on our hands, but I am very excited to be able to make this more accessible for everyone. If you've donated in the past, I would love to speak to you and get the full story behind your donation. Since July, we have also received several new collections into our archive that will be available in the upcoming months. First, we are indebted to Tunny Lee's family for entrusting us with the invaluable papers and research. A massive collection that spans the entire history of the Chinese in New England. This will take some time to fully process, though. Next, we have Mook Lee, a Boston area painter and veteran who will be featured in an upcoming exhibit in 2021. You will also be able to read an article about him in the Chronicle from his daughter. We also received his wife Elsie Chang Lee's papers and photographs. She was a programmer and patent holder in the 1960s and 1970s. We are also in the process of receiving another Boston Chinatown resident's collection, Mary Yick, who was the owner of the Tiki Hut on Tyler Street in the 1960s. Lastly, a smaller collection is now available online, David Wong's Bean Sprout Company, which was located at 12A Hudson Street. In September, we released our first digital collection, the Rose Lock Collection. In case you don't know, she was a female pilot in the 1930s, possibly inspired by Denison House's own Amelia Earhart. Her collection features a variety of materials, including letters, papers, her flight book, and even some hand-sewn buttons. You can visit both collections online at chisne.org/exhibits today. Over the summer and continue into the fall, we have worked with 5 student interns on a couple of projects. Of note, Sherry already mentioned our collaboration with Boston Asian YES. These youths have been extremely helpful to us. As part of the project, 2 of them, under my supervision, are focusing on creating their own exhibit for us from our collections. They get to choose whatever items they want. They will research them, caption them, and decide exactly how to exhibit them. This year has allowed us to focus inward for a time, but we do miss giving our tours and seeing the faces of our community members. I still have not met many of you. In the meantime, I hope that our digital programming offerings is offering some respite and allowing us to engage with you all. I also want to say thank you to our generous community sponsors, whose contributions are vital to fulfilling our mission and providing programming to the community. For our platinum level sponsor, Tufts Medical Center has given us much needed funding and the ability to hire interns through a COVID assistance grant. With their assistance, we were able to hit the ground running and prioritize our needs to get our archive under control. It is with great honor that we present Tufts with an appreciation award for their continued support of the Boston Chinatown community. Stephanie Fan, one of our longtime board members with a rich history with Tufts Medical Center, will say more about the award in just a moment.
I'm happy to have been asked to present our organization's appreciation award tonight to a longtime neighbor and friend, Tufts Medical Center. Having grown up in Chinatown in the shadow of the hospital, I've had many interactions with the hospital. The first one being when my mom sent me to accompany a non-English speaking woman to the hospital to translate for her. I was just a teenager and I was scared. It's like, what? I'm going to be responsible for how her health outcome? I don't know beans about gynecology. My mom said, just tell them she wants her tubes tied. So it was still a very, very frightening occurrence. And so I'm really glad now that there are interpreters at the hospital. And on top of that, that there are many more bilingual staff. Also, in terms of interactions with other interactions, it's been up and down. My first one was adversarial when the hospital was involved with planning the new Quincy School. But then I worked with the hospital, and then it was adversarial again when Tufts wanted to build a huge parking garage. And I'm just pleased to say that over the last 20, 25 years, it is a very positive relationship, and it is definitely collaborative. And in 1992, when the hospital established their Office of Community Health Improvement Programs, the office created the Asian Health Initiative, which was targeting the Asian community, trying to identify the issues, the health issues that affect our particular community, and as well as neighborhood events, making sure that the neighborhood is safe. So it has worked with community service providers over the last 20, 25 years, helping fund job training, and then offering job opportunities to people who've come out of that program. It works with the local schools to fill gaps in health education. And most recently, it has granted funds to our organization, the Chinese Historical Society, to support 3 youth who've been working as interns to support our new managing director in archival work and office support. So that's been greatly, greatly appreciated. Tufts Medical Center has come a long way over the years, and there's always more to do, but we're confident that the positive relationship that exists now will continue for many, many years to come. We recognize Tufts' collaborative efforts, and we're very, very pleased to present them with this appreciation award. Look forward to joint successes in the future. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Stephanie and CHSNE, for this recognition. I have and continue to experience the relationship and interaction as a highly engaged community member and running their community health programs at Tufts Medical Center. Tufts has had a long and complicated history with the community, not always the most positive. Tufts truly appreciates how far we have all come in working together, listening to community needs, providing patient care, finding common ground, etc. I am so appreciative to have the opportunity to partner with the community and to develop and implement programs that improve the overall health and well-being of my community.
I will now turn it back over to our board president, Cherry Dong, to introduce this year's Sojourner honorees.
At our last annual meeting, we were pleased to honor Helen Schlichte and Yee Wong for their many contributions. Yee Wong, a renowned architect whose work includes the Chinatown Gate in Boston, and Helen, critical in the founding of South Cove Manor Nursing Home and mentor to many in the community. Tonight, we honor Paul W. Lee and Robert Yuan with Sojourner Awards. Paul Lee is a distinguished attorney, one of the first Asian Americans to make partner in Boston. He grew up in Boston's Chinatown and never forgot his roots and first home, as reflected in his civic engagement and leadership over the years, including advocacy for affordable housing through his board leadership at the Asian Community Development Corporation, and recently establishing the Asian Community Fund at the Boston Foundation, where he is a board member, controlled by and to support the many needs of Asian Americans across Boston and Massachusetts. Robert Yuan is a pioneering neurosurgeon who fostered collaboration and information exchange locally and internationally, mentoring many across the world and cared for many more throughout his long and distinguished career. Living in Newton and recognizing a gap in services for a growing suburban Chinese community, he helped to start a Chinese family summer camp and a Chinese language school, and later joined those groups and programs when he co-founded the Greater Boston Chinese Cultural Association, GBCCA, which continues to thrive today. We look forward to hearing from our honorees.
Thank you very much for this award, recognizing me as a neurosurgeon and co-founder of GBCCA. I have been a neurosurgeon for all these years that I find myself practicing in the Boston area. I think it is important to think of Boston not only as a very original place for education, but a continuing city where all of us Chinese can learn. I just want to thank you for this award.
Greetings, everyone. I'm delighted to be able to say a few words about Dr. Robert Yuan on this happy occasion. I have the pleasure of knowing Dr. Yuan because his son Robin and I were roommates during our second year of medical school. It goes without saying that Dr. Yuan was the perfect role model for a young medical student like myself at the time. He being such an accomplished neurosurgeon in the greater Boston area, as well as a distinguished member of the Chinese American community. He commanded respect, but yet was gentle and kind. In the summer of 1976, I spent a month living in their home in Newton. We shared many meals and many stories. That experience only strengthened my admiration for Robert and his late wife, Grace. When Robin told me that Dr. Yuan is going to be given the Sojourner Award from the Chinese Historical Society of New England, that felt so good and so right. I'm particularly honored to be able to play a small part in recognizing Dr. Yuan, a giant figure in the Boston neurosurgical and Chinese American communities. Congratulations, Robert.
I want to thank the Chinese Historical Society of New England for this great honor. Last year when we gathered at the Empire Garden Restaurant, we heard about the remarkable achievements of the 2019 Sojourner honorees, Helen Schlichte and Yee Wong. I want to take this opportunity to thank Helen and Yee Wong for all that you've done and all that you are doing. And it's a great honor for me to join you as Sojourner honorees. It's also a real pleasure to share this night with Dr. Robert Yuan and to recognize your tremendous achievement in the founding of GBCCA. While we were working so hard in Chinatown, we knew of the important work you were doing in the suburbs. And I hope that all of us continue to work together as one community. So congratulations, Dr. Yuan. In keeping with the mission of CHSNE as a historical society, I thought I would share some of my family history with you tonight. Unfortunately, my family has not been as disciplined about preserving our family history as we should have been. So much of what you're going to hear is family lore. But I can tell you that in putting together this brief history, I've really developed a greater appreciation for the importance of the mission of CHSNE. So thank you for all you're doing to preserve our historical records. And as you're going to hear tonight, my family's story is really the classic American immigration story of perseverance and sacrifice. Immigrants seeking opportunity for themselves, but most of all for future generations like me. So we'll start the story with my great-grandfather on my father's side. Family lore has it that my great-grandfather was a stowaway on a boat from China, and that he swam to shore in San Francisco with no documentation. Like other immigrants with no papers, he blended into Chinatown and supporting himself with odd jobs. A few years later, after the 1906 earthquake destroyed much of San Francisco, including the immigration building, he came forward, like many other undocumented immigrants, and asked for his immigration records. This is how he became documented. Family lore has it that he worked on the railroads and eventually made his way to Boston, where he opened a hand laundry in Watertown. He worked basically 24/7, living in the back of the store, and sent money home to support his family back in the village. Over time, he brought his son, my grandfather, over to help in the laundry, and then my father. But my great-grandfather was a true sojourner. He always intended to go back to China, and he did manage to return to live out the rest of his days there. My grandfather also intended to be a sojourner, but living the lonely life in the back of the laundry, he fell into some of the vices that we've all heard about: gambling, smoking, excessive alcohol. But as far as we know, no opium or drugs. And tragically, he died of a heart attack in Boston in 1951 at the relatively young age of 49 before he could go back. My father came in 1939 at the age of 13 to work in the laundry. The hard work, lack of friends because he didn't speak English, and the harshness of laundry life resulted in many lonely nights. And because he was under 16, he was required to go to school. And of course, in those days, there was no such thing as English as a second language classes. So at the age of 13, he was put in with the kindergartners. And he made it through the second grade with this class before quitting just as soon as he turned 16. He continued to work in the laundry until he entered the U.S. Army toward the end of World War II. He served stateside, never making it overseas, but he was very proud of his service. He was one of 2 Chinese Americans in his troop, and we can see from the official troop picture that almost everyone in the troop was a full head taller than the 2 of them. I'm sure you've seen the wonderful book, Unsung Heroes, the historical record of the military service of Chinese Americans during World War II. I want to give a shout out to the author, William Chen, for this wonderful work of preserving this important history of Chinese Americans. Because my father served in the military, the War Brides Act permitted him to bring his wife into this country after the war, despite the restrictive immigration rules. So he went back to China and married my mother in an arranged marriage. According to family lore, he went back with a list of 10 names, and my mother was number 2 on the list. Family lore doesn't tell us what happened with number 1. My father was 21 and my mother was 19, Richard and Chow Lee. I often think of what it must have been like for my mother to move from the village where she spent her whole life, halfway around the world to live with a man she barely knew in a small apartment together with my grandfather. Although my grandfather was living a life of loneliness and excess, my mother said he was very nice to her. At that time, there were very few women in Chinatown, and the older wives took on the role of mentors and friends for younger ones like my mother. We were so poor that we moved 4 times within Chinatown before I was 6 years old. But there was a shared community because so many other families were in the same situation. Many of us would be out on the stoops of our row houses on Hudson Street in those pre-air conditioning days, and it felt like you knew the whole neighborhood. Certainly all the mothers were watching our every move and reporting any misbehavior to our parents. It was this sense of community that provided support for my parents, a job network, English language classes, and assistance in accessing social services when they were needed. By the time I was born, my father had closed the restaurant and was working in Chinese restaurants. Because he spoke some English, he didn't have to work in the back of the house in the kitchen. And one of the highlight memories for us growing up was when he was a waiter at the Cathay House, which is now the hot pot restaurant at the end of Beach Street near Gateway Park. At that time, Cathay House was Boston's most fancy Chinese restaurant. And in those days, Boston closed up early. And anyone wanting a late night bite after a show or a sporting event would go to Chinatown, where the restaurant stayed open late. My father waited on many celebrities over the years. I remember the time he came home and asked us if we had heard of someone named Frank Sinatra. And then with a twinkle in his eye, he produced a signed program. While we were in school in those days, we mostly saw him just once a week on Monday, his one day off, for family dinner when he would cook up a feast of Chinese food. And for all of you listening tonight, you all know that this is the Chinese way of showing their love, by feeding you. In total, my father worked the schedule of 12-hour days, 6 days a week, for over 50 years before retiring in his 70s. My mother was a garment worker in sewing factories around Boston, including on the 5th floor of the China Trade Building where CHSNE is located. The factories were hot and noisy. They're called sweatshops for a reason. But she really enjoyed being with the other Chinese ladies and the other immigrant ladies. She often came home and tried out some Portuguese, Italian, or some other language she learned at the shop. When I was 6, my family bought a rundown row house on Ash Street next to a boarding house for men, many of whom were drunk most of the time. Although we fixed the house up, it was not the most desirable location because the other side of the street was where the Orange Line came barreling out of the downtown tunnel and climbed toward the elevated tracks on Washington Street. I attended the old Quincy School on Tyler Street, where CCBA is now located. And while I was there in the late 1950s, the student body was mostly 100% Chinese. During that time, the Chinatown neighborhood was being torn apart by eminent domain, takings of homes and whole streets. First for the construction of the Southeast Expressway, and then the Massachusetts Turnpike extension. In addition, institutional expansion by Tufts Medical Center wiped out our neighborhood around Ash Street. Most families moved to the South End, which was nearby and within walking distance of Chinatown. But my parents opted instead to move out into the suburbs in Brookline so that my brother Tom and my sister Liz and I could attend the good schools there. For me, this began my journey to find my way in the mainstream world. Like my parents, I had to work hard. I had to learn new cultures. I had to find support, allies, mentors, all the while holding on to what was really important to me. And that was family, friends, and giving back to communities like Chinatown that helped my family so much, or at least paying it forward to new immigrants arriving here. This is the reason for my commitment to community work. I had the privilege of working with such dedicated community leaders as Caroline Chang, Neil Chin, and Tunny Lee, all co-founders of CHSNE, but I worked with them to co-found the Asian Community Development Corporation, which over the last 30 years has built affordable housing in Chinatown and worked to make the neighborhood vibrant and livable, to bring back some of the old Chinatown where we all benefited from helping each other find our way in a new land. I'm particularly proud that ACDC built affordable housing at the Metropolitan on the lot where we used to live on Ash Street, and at One Greenway where we used to live on Hudson Street. Over the years, I've been fortunate to have mentors and allies help me achieve success in my professional life as a lawyer. That's a longer story for another day, but I feel so fortunate during my professional life to have been to the White House to meet with President Clinton in the Oval Office, to have been president of the National Asian Pacific American Bar Association, NAPABA, which represents the interests of over 40,000 Asian American lawyers around the country, and to have been a member of the Board of Governors of the American Bar Association, and even to have been invited to the Queen's Garden Party at Buckingham Palace. To have gone from being a kid running around the streets of Chinatown to being a partner at a major law firm in the financial district just a mile away. All this I owe to the hard work and sacrifice of my immigrant ancestors, my great-grandfather, the Sojourner, my grandfather who wanted to be a Sojourner but never made it home, and my parents who decided to settle in this country as an American family. And I'm grateful for my own family, my wife, Mary, whose immigrant family is also the embodiment of the American dream. They had a hand laundry in Davis Square in Somerville, where many of the customers were Tufts professors. When she entered Tufts as an undergraduate, many of her professors recognized her. She went on to medical school at Tufts, intern and residency at Tufts Medical Center, teaching at Tufts Medical School, becoming dean for education, as well as associate provost for the entire university back in Medford. And we're so proud of our son, Greg, a tech software entrepreneur on the West Coast, and our daughter, Samantha, a public interest lawyer advocating for the rights of women in New York City. I hope that people can look at our family, like so many families who are supporting CHSNE tonight, and see the power of immigration to enable newcomers and their children to achieve the American dream, and to help make this country a world leader in science, technology, and moral and ethical leadership. I hope that this country will continue to value immigrants for all they can do to advance the greatness of our nation. So thank you once again to CHSNE for keeping our history alive. And thank you very much for this Sojourner Award.
I would like to take a moment and thank our generous sponsors for the evening. With their continued great work and generosity, we are able to continue our mission of documenting, preserving, and promoting the history and legacy of Chinese immigration in New England. Thank you so much. I want to say thank you to my board members, and especially my executive committee, Sherry Dong, Joseph Wang, and Stephanie Fan, who kept the office running during our director search, which allowed the transition to be smooth. They have given me an incredible amount of support in my first few months at CHSNE. Lastly, I would like to thank all of our supporters and donors. Without you, there would be no CHSNE or archive to take care of. If you have items to donate, collections to share, ideas for programming, or funding opportunities, I would love to speak to you. Please feel free to contact me. I want to hear from you.
Thank you for joining CHSNE today for our first virtual annual meeting, continuing your support of and participation in our mission and activities, and recognizing and appreciating our 3 honorees. We've mentioned a few programming highlights to look forward to for 2021. A number of virtual exhibits in the works, and the Tunny Lee lecture scheduled for December. We hope you will be able to join us for these events, and thank you in advance for your ongoing contributions to support our work and highlight Asian American history, experiences, and contributions. We hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you once more for spending the evening with us. This concludes the 2020 CHSNE annual meeting. Thank you.